Hi, I'm Janie Lawson and I'm a milliner. I run the Glam Hatters tea parties. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make hair accessories. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make a wedding fascinator. We're going to be using a cinnamon base, we have some veiling and we've got our feather trims here. Now you can buy all these individually or you can buy them in the kit form. I do the Glam Hatters kits and you can check out my website if you want to have a look at making one of these. So first of all, you've got your pattern. Now I've made a circle, but you can really make any shape, so you could make a teardrop shape or a star, whatever you like. Now you've got your cinnamon triangle, which I've folded. I'm taking my pattern piece up to the top of the triangle, so I'm keeping away from the folded edge. I'm popping a pin in here, one side, and a pin here. And then I'm going to cut around the pattern. Now I'm going to take off my paper pattern. So I'm left with my 2 layers, pop my pins back in, and then I'm going to use my wire for the edges. This is called memory wire, and it's a really fab product because it holds the shape that you put into it. Now I'm going to start sewing. Because the cinnamon has got quite big holes, rather than making a huge knot at the bottom of my double thread, what I do is what I call a lasso stitch. So with my first stitch I put it through and I leave part of the stitch on the other side. Then I stitch from the front to the back and I just go in between the thread. So I'm making a little lasso, because if you tried to make a knot big enough to not go through the cinnamon, you'd be here all week. Now I'm going to hold the wire on, and this is very simple. I'm in 1/2 centimetre from the edge. I'm coming up one side of the wire, going around the wire and back down to the back. And I'm going to go all the way around sewing the wire in. And you don't have to have, stitches don't have to be tiny. You can do them about 1 centimetre apart, just to hold the wire in. Now you might find on this first stage it can be a bit fiddly, because you've got the raw edge of the cinnamon, the thread can get a bit caught, but just take your time and be patient because it's really worth it. The wire is kind of one of the most important pieces of the hat because it gives it the shape. So I've stitched all the way around. Now when I've gone to the end of the wire, you can see I've overlapped it. So that's about 3 inches overlap, and smaller stitches on the overlap to keep it all in place. Okay, so the next part is putting on the bias strip. So we get the strip back that I cut earlier, and we're going to open it out. We're going to fold each side towards the middle, and when I'm pressing it, rather than pulling on it, I'm pressing down onto it to make a nice sharp fold. If you start pulling on it, it will pull out of shape a little bit because it's on the bias, so it's quite stretchy. So I've gone down one side, and you can see I've not quite gone into the middle. I'm going to do the same on the other side, because what you don't want is you don't want them both touching, because once you fold it back, you will get little bits of cinnamon popping through the edge, and you don't want that because you're going to be wearing it on your head. You don't want it to be uncomfortable. So you can see I've left a little gap in the middle. Now I'm going to fold that back down all the way along, pushing down on it. I'm going to cut off the end, and then the lovely thing about this is this, you can just give it a stretch. And I'm doing this kind of action to curve it so that it will go around the circle easily. So you're just pulling all the way around. You've got this nice curvy bias strip. Now I'm taking my base, and this is where you need your pins, and I'm sandwiching the base between the bias strip, so it's on each side. Then I'm going to pop my pins in, and as you're doing it you'll think, oh, that's never going to go in, it's all going to fold, but it just will, because cinnamon is what they call the milliner's friend, and it will do what you want. So I'm pushing it in, gently pushing it as I go. And a good tip with the pins, have them pointing forwards, have them pointing into the middle, and that way you won't hurt yourself so much on them. And now when you get to the edge, either you can use this bit to make a swirl, or you can trim it off. For this one I'm going to trim it off. So you trim, fold it underneath so you haven't got any rough edges, and then you pin it over your starting point so that's all nice and tucked in. And now I'm going to sew this in place. So you get your double thread again with a knot at the bottom. And now the idea of this stage is that it's almost like a staple. You're stapling down the front and the back all at the same time, and you want to be quite close to this edge because you don't want that to peel up later. So I start at the back, and the underneath bit is the bit that you've wired because you don't want that showing through the top. Little stitch on top, and then you can do a bigger stitch underneath because that is going to be against your head and nobody's going to see that anyway. So there we go, I'm stitching along. And a good thing to do is take your pins out as you go. It'll be less to catch your thread up on, and you'll know where you've sewn. Now for the next part, I'm going to take the veiling. This is 70 centimetres long. I'm going to scrunch one side, grab a pin, and I'm going to pin this towards the back through the scrunch. So I'm going to pin here. And do the same on the other side, scrunch up. And it's nice with the veiling because it's just like scrunching up a piece of paper, it's very easy. And what I tend to do is cross the pins over to keep it all in place. Now, so this is your bit where you learn how to make a birdcage veil, which everybody really likes a birdcage veil at the moment. Go down to the middle, put it back on itself, and just using your pins, pin through a square of the veiling. Then go halfway between the scrunch at the back and the pin at the front and do the same thing. So you're pulling it forwards, pulling it back and pinning through a square of the veiling. And again on the other side, go into the middle, pull it back and through a square of the veiling. Now you can do that as much as you like, so you can end up with this quite flat, or you can do what I do and leave it so it's got a nice bit of height, but you can see that gives you a nice shape there. Now the thing to do next is to work out where you want your feather. These feathers are lovely, they're even nicer if you give them a bit of a curve. So you think that might be quite nice at the side, and then you've got these little ones that you can tuck in behind to come out. So what I'm going to do is first of all sew on my veiling, so I haven't got millions of things on the base to work around. Okay, so again, always a double thread with millinery. with a knot at the end. Now where the scrunch is, I'm just going to pop in a few stitches to hold that all in place. Okay, now if you wanted to, you could add beading at the same time so that you end up with a bit of a sparkle going through. But a good thing to do is to take your pins out as you go along. That way you know if everything is in place and you know that you've already stitched it, so you don't end up going back at the end and doing more stitches. Okay, so that's the scrunch on. Now I'm going to do a big stitch underneath, and wherever I've pinned through the little squares, so I know all I have to do is catch that square, take the pin out, pull it through, that's one, and I'm going to flip over here, so a big stitch underneath in order to get over to that pin. Stitch through that square of veiling, that's another bit on. Yep, brilliant. So that's my veil on. Now I'm going to pop on the feathers, and all I need to do is just to get these on, is just to sew around the stem. So you can see there's a little stem on the end of the feathers here. So I'm going to go up one side of the stem, down the other side. Now sometimes, like I did then, you'll get caught around the feathers, so just be careful of that because you really need to be around the stem. And then to tie off, I'm going to the back and I'm doing a version of the lasso stitch that I did at the beginning. So I pull it through, but I keep hold of the stitch, go back up, and again I go through that loop, pull it nice and tight, and I always do two of those just to make sure it's nice and secure. Okay, so we've got the fascinator and the decoration. We need to keep it on our heads. So now we've made the base of the fascinator and the veiling and the decoration, we need to make it stay on our heads. And the way we do that is we use the comb. Now, you put the comb at the back of the fascinator facing forwards. So I've had a little think about where the front would be, and this is going to be the front because this is where the veiling is. So I've popped the comb at the back. I get my double thread again, make sure I've got a knot in it, and then I start at the back and I make sure it's just a little stitch at the front, but then I angle the needle so that I come out in between the tooth. And I'm going to be stitching along the comb through the teeth. So this bit really needs to be secure because this is the bit that keeps it on. So I've done this fascinator with a circle and I've arranged the feathers at the back. You could really, once you've got the cinnamon and the veiling, you could do any shape you like, as I said earlier, but you know, you could really have fun with it and really be creative and a little bit crazy, because most milliners are. And you could add crystals or buttons, anything really. With the veiling, this is a plain veiling, but you could make a spot veiling by getting some pipe cleaners and tying them just around the squares and trimming them off. So you could do multicoloured veiling as well. So you can really have fun with it. Now I'm at the last tooth. And to finish off, I'm going to do that Lovely millinery stitch again. So I come up and hang on to my stitch, come back down, go through the loop, and I do one more of those to make sure it's all secure. And now it might seem like the comb's the wrong way around. The reason for that is to put it into your hair, hang on to the comb, lift your hair up, and you're going to brush the comb backwards and then push it forwards so it's all nice and secure. And that is how you make a wedding fascinator.